Hey, Pakara here, and welcome to another episode of Leftover Vlogs. I think we're on episode 6 or 7. I can't remember, but this is probably gonna be more of a low-key, low-energy episode because not only did I just wake up from a nap, but I also have a full plan for like what I'm gonna run through, and I'm basically just going to be like, this is the business only episode. We are running through these worksheets, and yeah, I feel like this is the most check-in-y of these episodes, because the other ones I've kind of been talking more about, like, obviously the process and everything, and so some of the stuff that I've learned and everything, but I feel like this is definitely the first episode in a while where I'm going to just be going through specifically the sheets as like a roundup sort of thing. So I have my list here of stuff that I'm going to be talking about, and I'm just gonna like go through what I worked on, because this is definitely the largest part of this hiatus so far. It started February 1st, and then my goal was to finish everything at the end of March, so March 31st. But I actually ended up finishing everything super early, March 13th, which is kind of funny because it's like March 31st and March 13th. But I actually ended up finishing everything super early this time around, so I'm really excited about that. But I do have like a couple more weeks of March left now that I'll talk about that later, because there was a plan that I wanted to do for the rest of March, so I could just like start directly on April, start like the story stuff, which I'm excited about, because like now if you look at the hierarchy, I've done the top one, I've done the bottom, the two underneath of it, and now I'm actually about to get into like doing the story. But I'll talk about more of that later. But yeah, let's get into the worksheet portion of, or let's get into the Pokemon and human world building worksheets portion of like just the whole hiatus thing, because it was a lot. It was definitely a lot, and it was at times it was really daunting to like look at from afar and be like, okay, this is how much I have left. And I definitely had, because I think I mentioned in the government worksheets where I had like times where I would cut stuff out, like for instance the towns and territories and cities and stuff. There were certain territories where I was like, all right, I don't need to like fill a sheet out for those, because like that involves too much story, and I don't want to make up the story on the fly right now. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm basically just taking inventory. And the same thing happened here, just on a much larger scale, because I had way more to work with, and way more like worksheets to fill out. And speaking of which, I'm going to put up, like, I don't know whose Pokemon species card I'm going to put up, or whose like worksheets I'm going to put up, but I'll put up something so we can I can like work through and like highlight specific parts, because I want to really go into the worksheets and how they functioned, and just like how interesting it was to actually fill everything out. So I feel like I need an example for that. I feel like I need to, maybe I'll just use Trico or something, I don't know. And that of course means that there's certain parts where like the speed paint in the background is obviously not going to be like visible the entire time, but it'll still be going in the background. Speaking of speed paint, I don't really know what I'm doing for this one. I was gonna like just color in some sketches from the project that I'll talk about later in the vid, but now I think I might do I might go in and do like what I was talking about for the government version, where it's like all of the departments feel like character bios. So I might go in and like do some character design for each of the government departments, and like I can turn those into the leaders of the department. So I might do that tonight. I want to kind of get that done soon. It's Sunday the 20th right now, so I want to kind of get that done and out soon. I was hoping tonight, but I'm not going to push myself too much, because this video is definitely going to need more editing with me going over the worksheets and having to put them on screen. So yeah, I guess now that we have like kind of the basic stuff out of the way, let me just kind of go into why I needed the Pokemon worksheets. Because with the government, it was like, okay, I was making a government out of thin air. Yeah, I was making a government out of thin air. I was doing research and stuff too, but I need, like, that's obviously, if you're gonna make a story and you have like a government where you have like world building stuff like that, then obviously you need to sit down and like figure that stuff out. But with Pokemon and making a Pokemon fan project, it's like, okay, the Pokemon are already there, right? And you already have like shout out to Bulbapedia. If I had a sponsor, I would absolutely get them. Or if they sponsored, I'd absolutely get them to like sponsor this video, because holy shit, Bulbapedia is the MVP of this entire section. Yes, even the parts on the like human stuff too, because there were certain things where I had to go in and see like how, like in the anime, for instance, like what kind of holidays they have there, just to like pick the writer's brains of the anime and of like canon Pokemon to see like what they've already put in, because maybe I could use those as ideas. But like for the Pokemon and specifically, Bulbapedia is the MVP, because oh my god, everything was like right there. Everything and the thing is, when I made the worksheets, I don't believe I looked at Bulbapedia. I don't think I looked at anywhere to like see what information was available before I didn't. Because, okay, when I made the sheets, I was just looking at, alright, this is what I'm going to need to know for these Pokemon. But I wasn't looking at any kind of like Cerebi or Bulbapedia or anything to see like what information is available for these Pokemon, because I knew I was going to have to do a little bit of like imagining. Sounds. I was gonna have to come up with quite a bit of stuff for these species, and that also leads me into why I'm even doing the Pokemon sheets, to why I even did the Pokemon species cards to begin with. Mainly, I wanted to keep inventory on Pokemon, because I feel like I not only forget a lot of Pokemon that exist, but I also like, if there's certain Pokemon that I like favor over another, then I'm more likely to use those like on the early routes or whatever. Like you're more likely to see a Zigzagoon than like a Lotad, and it makes, or specifically like any of the Pokemon that are not from Hoenn that I didn't even realize were in the game. It's been so long since I've actually played Hoenn, but I didn't even realize, like Donphan and Phanpy, for instance. Girafarig is in the game. Like I didn't even know they were in Hoenn. So the Pokemon species cards worksheets helped out a lot more when it came to like foreign Pokemon, but they also helped out with like regular Pokemon too, or Hoenn Pokemon too, because there's a lot of stuff like in the Pokédex that informs Pokemon outside of just like their appearance and stuff. And usually whenever I'm like, okay, I'm going to put a Pokemon in leftovers somewhere, usually I'm going off of like their appearance and what, you know, they're based off of, like what I think they're based off of. And I don't really look at a lot of the dex entries. I know that sounds like irresponsible, but that's why I'm doing it now. I don't really look at a lot of the dex entries to like, because in my opinion, I'm like, okay, well, these are Pokemon. Like I'm making the Pokemon for leftovers. They're different than like the Pokemon in canon, obviously. But like, there's so much in canon that you can use as a jump off point that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to ignore that. Hopefully it makes sense, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to just like completely ignore canon when canon has so many good things. Like the amount of Pokemon that like eat energy and souls is quite alarming. And it not only do I now know that like, oh, this is the diet of a Pokemon. Like not everybody eats berries, because like everyone was eating berries and leftovers beforehand, but like not every Pokemon eats berries. Like this Pokemon I've shown eating berries that should not be eating berries. because like they can't handle it. Like their diet is not like, for instance, Aaron. I don't know if I actually have shown Celeste's Aaron for his name is Foro. I don't even know if I mentioned his name, but I don't know if I've shown him eating berries. But like now, when it comes time to like show them eating food, I know that like Aaron would be eating minerals and stuff, and rocks and everything, and that also goes to inform the relationship between Pokemon and humans, because it's like, okay, not every like animal eats the same thing. So if you're gonna, like, for instance, in real world, if you're gonna own a dog versus if you're gonna own a horse, there's clearly different standards for what you need to do to take care of them. Then you have to have different budgets for taking care of them. So I want to be more mindful of stuff like that, because it's like, okay, if a 10-year-old catches an Aeron, right? If a 10-year-old catches an Aeron and they're like, oh, I'm gonna give them berries, but really they should be feeding them like minerals and stuff, then like that can inform some story beats where it's like, oh yeah, it's actually a lot harder to be a trainer, because you have to account for all your different Pokemon's diets and all like the way you take care of them. But yeah, so I needed to basically just take inventory of Pokemon, and that's like all aspects of Pokemon. That's just Pokemon themselves, their abilities, because I wasn't gonna worry about abilities, because I haven't really figured out how abilities factor in with leftovers yet, like with the way they, like, Pokemon manifest their magic or just like function in the real world as opposed to functioning in a game sense. So I wasn't sure, like, abilities and like typings and stuff like that, how I was gonna handle those. So that's another thing I needed to another reason why I needed to do the Pokemon worksheets. And then the magic typings themselves, or like just the types themselves, like water, earth, Avatar, water, ground, and all that. Those typings too. Again, I needed to figure out what they were strong against and what they're weak against, and like actually have that all in one place, because I have the biggest boo boo in leftovers, where I feel like I'm exposing myself again. Where I thought fighting was weak against ice. I thought fighting was weak against ice, and there's a part in leftovers where like Kiva is about to use her ice fang, and Kohen is about to use like his fighting move. I won't spoil that, but he's about to use his move, and I'm like, oh, this is like cool, because they're on equal ground right now, because she's using a move that he's weak against, and he's using a move that she's weak against, and that's like, and then that just completely blew up in my face. Like, ice is so weak against fighting, it makes no sense. So yeah, that's not. There's other story points too to do with that I'm just like, now I just realized that I'm gonna have to redo those. But this is why I did these sheets, because now I know, and I have it in one place. I have it in like, my worksheets or whatever, and I've written it down. I don't know, do any of you guys have this thing where and I feel like it's a thing that most artists, or if people have it, it's usually like an artist thing, but whenever I write something down, I'll remember writing it down. Like, specifically if I write it down and then I like draw with it too. That's why I used to draw a lot in school, and of course get in trouble for it, but that's why I used to draw a lot in school for like my notes and stuff. My notebooks would be full, because it's something about the drawing paired with writing down the actual notes, writing or saying stuff out loud, where it wires better for me than just hearing it. So somebody could tell me the weaknesses for a Pokemon type, but unless I write it down or I like draw it out, I won't necessarily retain that information. So that's the other reason why I went through and did these Pokemon worksheets, is because it's one thing to just read. It's one thing to just read about Pokemon online, but it's another thing to like actually have my own log of information, my own notes that I can remember writing out, just because of the way I retain information. Which is really funny too, because at the same time I was playing Pokemon Legends Arceus, and it was like all the girls do is put together Pokédex entries. I was like putting them, I was figuring out, the Pokédex in Arceus, and then I would be like, alright, time to like get back to work, and then it's just me figuring out the Pokédex entries for leftovers, or coming up with Pokédex entries for leftovers. Because again, there was a lot of areas where I had to like fill in the gaps, so it was very interesting. It was a very interesting experience. But alright, so this episode is just gonna be long, and I've accepted that it's gonna be long because it's a lot of me like taking inventory on just everything that I've done, and like going through each individual step that I did to fill out the sheets, even more so than I think I've done in the past. So yeah, it's gonna be a long one. Buckle in. But here's the order of attack for the worksheet. So first of all, I did the first one I did was Pokemon species cards, specifically for Hoenn. And that was just me going through and filling out a worksheet for every group. I'll explain that later, but every group of Hoenn. Second thing I did was magic typings, and that was me going through and figuring out what's the weaknesses and strengths. And that had like a little bit of a change when I got to it, but again, I'll explain that later. Third step were fighting, battle, and exhibition styles. And then the fourth step were, this is when I cross over from Pokemon world building into human world building and culture. So the fourth step was important holidays and events. Fifth step was religions and fellowships. Sixth, how do I count? Sixth step, oh my god, I have a list and it's kicking my ass right now. Sixth step is classes and other identifications. And then after I got all of that done, I went back to Pokemon species cards for Pokemon that are like foreign Mon. So Mon that aren't naturally from Hoenn, but are still available in the regional decks in specifically in Emerald, Ruby, and Sapphire, because I know there's like way more Pokemon in Oris, but I'm only loosely taking Oris into account. It's kind of a weird like mixture of things where it's like certain things that happened in Oris are in leftovers, and certain things that happen in like Ruby and Sapphire and leftovers, and it's like a weird mixture of things, especially since leftovers takes place in what is essentially a time period of like 2006, which is closer to Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald than it is to Oris. So it's definitely an interesting mixture of situations. But yeah, so let me go through each section, each step, and just kind of talk about what I did. So first up, the Pokemon species cards for Hoenn. And there were 69 worksheets I had to fill out for the Pokemon in Hoenn. I'm not laughing because it's a number. I'm just thinking about like how much, like my printer was struggling, and the fact that there were times where I accidentally printed it off two-sided. I'm like, I'm so sorry, printer. I had to print all of them off again. This is just me thinking about like the struggle of actually getting the sheet so I can figure it out. But yeah, so my plan of attack was to put all the Pokemon in one evolution group on a sheet. And if they didn't have evolutions, like if they were just one Pokemon, they would just have their own sheet. And if they had like a counterpart, like Plusle and Minun or Illumise I almost said Delmise, but that's not it. Illumise and Volbeat. If they were like partnered, they would go on the same sheet. And then when like, it was so funny because I would be filling out, like, obviously when I do every evolutionary line, or every Pokemon in that evolutionary line, like if it's a 3-stage evolution, I've got 3 Bulbapedia tabs open, like going through each of them to figure out like how I can summarize all this information into one worksheet. But when I would have like Spinda, for instance, it was just one Pokemon. I was like, oh, thank God, especially like later on. But yeah, so that was how I approached that. So also to avoid having to print out like a bunch of sheets, like I wasn't going to print out a sheet for every single Pokemon, so it was just better for me to group them together. Okay, so again, big shout out to, this is where I'm reading my notes, so it might be a little disjointed now, but big shout out to Bulbapedia, because the way that their articles, or the way that their like Wikipedia pages for Pokemon are organized, made this so much easier, because you have the Pokemon at the top, you have like the abilities, the typing, the egg group, and you know, all this other stuff. You have that in a nice neat little box. And then for me, because I had a section on the worksheet called Basis, where it was basically like, what is the Pokemon based off of? And again, when I had like a 3-stage evolution, it got a little full in that Basis section, but I had to account for all of them. But they have a section on Bulbapedia called Origin, and that just like summarized so nicely not only the etymology of the Pokemon, so like what the name is, why it's named that way, but also just the possible bases and the possible origins, or what the Pokemon is based off of. And that was super helpful, because it didn't just list like it didn't just list the official canonized basis for the Pokemon, it also listed like what there's like speculation for, and that really helped broaden broaden my idea of what I could base the Pokemon off of when I do like my character or feature designs and stuff like that. So there were a lot of times where it was like, oh, you know, this Pokemon's based off of a chicken, but it's also possibly based off of this yokai, and so it's like, okay, it just helps to put that down too. Or like a specific one I think was Swampert, where it's obviously based on an axolotl and stuff, but like also I think the ridges, Marshtomp is based off of the axolotl and the mudfish, but the ridge on its head resembles like a Trojan hat or a Trojan helmet, the feathery portion of a Trojan helmet. So that, you know, kind of helps to inform, just even if I don't use it, it just helps to have it there, so it could kind of inform like maybe Marshtomps in the wild are like a militaristic species now because of that little detail. So it was really helpful to have that there. But once I I had it down to a science at a certain point, because I started the first time, like I want to say 15 to 20 sheets where I was just starting out, and I was getting really disheartened because I was like, oh my god, they're taking so long for me to do, because I would get distracted and I would click on like, oh, what is, you know, this is based on this, like what is this, and then I'd be researching, and it was just like, it was taking a lot. So at a certain point in time I was like, all right, you know what, I'm gonna give myself 5 minutes. And then I started working on the sheet, and I was like, all right, I need another minute or so. And it came down to, I could get all of these sheets, not all of them together, but I could get each of these sheets done in 8 minutes and 30 seconds. It was specifically 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Like, there was times where I would go, you know, maybe like 15, 20 seconds over or under, depending on if it's a long evolutionary line like Wurmple, or if it's, you know, like Spinda, where it's just one person, or, you know, one Pokemon. So I got it down to like, I literally got it down to a science. And once I did that, couldn't tell me nothing. I was blazing through. There was times where I would like dedicate, I would just sit down and be like, all right, 2 hours, how many can I get done? How many 8-minute, 30-second, increments can I get in 2 hours? But I didn't want to actually calculate it because I didn't want to set myself up to like, okay, I can get 10 of these sheets done in, 2.5 hours or whatever. So I'll only do those, you know what I mean? Because again, there were the ones that didn't always last 8 minutes and 30 seconds. So I didn't want to like gimp myself if I could go and do more. But at that point, once I figured out that that was the time that I needed to take, I ended up having like my very specific process. We love a process over here. We love like just like having a process that you're married to, and not anytime it's broken, it's like devastating. And oh my god, wait, okay, I know I said Bubblepedia is MVP, but like the fucking ads. The fucking ads on that website, can't get it out. There's so many ads. And I think I just found out like a couple of days ago that my ad block was off. So I think I haven't gone back to Bubblepedia since then because I'm done with the Pokemon species worksheet. So I haven't gone back since then, but I wonder if that would help, because I like the amount of times I saw that same video that was like, oh, these people are related to these people from Legends Arceus, or like a countdown, a Watch Mojo countdown for like the best or scariest Pokemon dex entries or something, like in just the corner. It was so distracting, but regardless of that, I was still happy to be to be able to like work with Bubblepedia and to be able to like have the information in one place. It was like a game of how do I get all this done in 8 minutes and 30 seconds and not get distracted. But I managed to get it done. But I would open up, so I would get the pages open before the timer started. This is when I was like actually doing the timer, which is for most of this section. But I'd get the pages open before they started. So if if there was like, Trico, Sceptile, and Grovyle, Trico, Grovyle, and Sceptile, I would open up the tabs for each of those, just before I even started the timer. So then, once I hit the timer, first thing I get down, because I already have the names on the worksheets, and this is probably the point where I would put up the worksheets and the videos so you can actually, like specifically Trico's, so you can actually see it. But once the timer starts, first thing I get down is the typing. Second thing I get down is and typing is pretty self-explanatory, but I would also, if they evolve like specially, so if they have like a Moonstone evolution or friendship or whatever, I would also, before I start the timer, I would write that down, so like have an arrow between the two, and then have like trade it, or linking cord, or Moonstone in daytime, or something like that. So I would do that, and then I would hit the timer, and then it would be like, okay, I put down the typing for everything. And then the abilities. Now the abilities were interesting because Pokemon don't always necessarily keep the same abilities throughout the line. So I'd be in here praying, like, please, okay, like, please have all of them have Overgrow and nothing else. Like, and then obviously if Pokemon have Megas, they have Mega abilities generally 9 times out of 10. So I was like, alright, just needless to say, the ability section could get pretty lengthy from time to time. And I don't need to put down what each of the abilities does, because that's too much information. If I need to, like, if I even factor in abilities in the story, then I could just go back, like look at the ability on the worksheet and then go back and read what it does and then go from there. And if I, ever need to keep keep an inventory of abilities, then that's a future Deja problem. But after I put down the abilities, I think I would so the evolution speed is the next part, but really it should have been leveling speed because not every Pokemon evolves. So I would look at the leveling speed, and that's the little box on Bubblepedia where it's like medium fast or slow or erratic or fluctuating. So that's a little thing, and that's for me is just like it's good to have that because that can help with story stuff too, where it's like, okay, a Pokemon wants to evolve but is a slow leveling speed, so they're like they have to work harder or something, like and they have a teammate who's erratic or fast of evolution or leveling speed, and that can inform like some conflict between the two of them. So that's why I took that down. I gotta say though, I had never in my life looked at leveling speeds in Pokemon. I'm not a competitive Pokemon player, so it's like I just never cared about it. Same thing with same thing with abilities, and then basically everything in the box besides the type. I just never really looked at egg groups. I think I call them breeding groups or something on the worksheet, because not every Pokemon has eggs and leftovers. So I would go to I would do the typings, then the abilities, and then the leveling speed, and then the egg group, and then I would hit the origin tab on Bubblepedia on the article, and then go down and collect from each of the three or each of the members on that page. I would collect just whatever I felt like the most important or basis creatures or myths or concepts or whatever. Just whatever I felt like the most important ones were. Those are the ones that I would put down. So after that, I would just hit the back button. I'm telling you, the process was chef's kiss. It was so quick after a while. But I would hit, the back button, because obviously when you click the tab to go down to origin, it takes you to a new page, essentially. It's just lower on the page, but it still functions like, you click the link and got sent to a new page. So I hit the back button. That takes me all the way back to the top of the page. And then scroll down just a little bit to just the basic information for the Pokemon. Usually in that section is where they talk about if they have that information, like if it mentions it in the Pokédex. They'll talk about the diet and the habitat for the Pokemon. It's almost always going to be something about the habitat of the Pokemon, not so much the diet of the Pokemon. So a lot of the times I had to go in and make some judgments, make some stuff up based on what the Pokemon was based on. So there's a lot of times where, because I just want all of my Pokemon to eat berries and get along, but Mother Nature is crazy. So even in the Pokédex, there's a lot of times where they're like, oh, they specifically prey on this Pokemon. I think it was Sharpedo that specifically preys on Love Disc, or is it Barboach? I can't remember. Not Barboach. Huntail is the one I was thinking of, but something will specifically prey on a specific Pokemon, and it's that makes it easier for me for the worksheet, but not so much for me when it comes to the morals. And I still haven't figured out, what I'm gonna do about the fact that Pokemon who are sentient creatures hunt down other Pokemon who are sentient creatures. I haven't figured out how I'm going to work that into the story and how I'm going to solve that kind of moral issue. But we're working on it. It was just for now good to get down, what Pokemon eat what, and how I can figure out how that works later on. So after I did after I would do the habitat and the diet, which the habitat, like I said, is usually in the first part of the description is actually, there's like, every time you go to a part of the description for each Pokemon, there's a whole section that describes what the Pokemon looks like. So I had gotten into the habit of being like, next, and just scrolling down, and like, I locked on to like grasslands and savannas, temperate forests, like I was locking on to those at a certain point. It also helped that they were links to like actual Wikipedia articles of the sorts of habitats, so I could like immediately spot like what the habitat was going to be, because it would be a blue link. So after that, the largest part of the worksheet is behavior, and this is where I had to, like, whenever I was going through on this timer, I had to really spend as little energy as possible on the top portion, just so I could get to the behavior portion, because there's a lot that goes into the behavior portion, especially if there is a 3-stage evolution. I have to, like I said before, I gotta go through and read each Pokemon's, like, what they usually do, and then factor that in. So there's a lot of times where it's like, Pokemon will evolve into something more aggressive. Like I keep using Aeron, but Aggron, they're very aggressive. They're very aggressive and territorial. And so that kind of had to inform, like, okay, if they're aggressive and territorial, then how do Lairon and Aeron act? Because, you know, sometimes Pokemon will be super detailed in their Pokedex entries for like one member of the species, but like the rest of them are just kind of like, yeah, they're made out of metal. You know, so I had, you know, sometimes I had to go look at somebody whose Pokedex entry was super detailed, and then be like, all right, so clearly, you know, this Pokemon protects the rest of them, which means that maybe the other ones, like, maybe their plate metal is not as hard, so that's why they need protecting. Or, you know, maybe sometimes Pokemon will just evolve and just leave. So you got like 2 members of the evolutionary line that live in packs, and that was part of the things that I had to specify too. Is like, do they live in herds? Do they live solo? Do they live, you know, some live above ground and some live underground. So it was a lot to have to put into the behavior section. But overall, I'm pretty happy, because I also got to like play like I was actually making a Pokédex. So, because, you know, a lot of the Pokédex entries will have like myths, and will have, you know, what people think of the Pokemon in there. And I didn't necessarily have a ton of space for that, especially if I had like the 3-stage evolution, but I was able to get, you know, a couple things in there too. Like, I'm trying to think of one that was really cool. If I remember to put it on the screen, I'll put it on the screen. But I think like Relicanth. Oh, okay, no, Relicanth's thing was actually like cool, because it was a canon portion of Relicanth's Pokédex entry, where it's like, I think it was. I've looked at so much stuff that my lines are crossed, but I think Relicanth is like the patterns on its body are looked at as a map. And then that's how you, like, that's why they're around a bunch of like the Reggie stuff and everything. But I thought that was pretty cool to look at, as like when somebody sees, you know, a Relicanth, they automatically think that they're in line for like a grand prize, like they're gonna find some treasure or something, because Relicanth live really, really deep under the ocean. Like they're basically bottom feeders. So if you see one, then obviously, you know, especially with the map thing, it's like, oh, this is my lucky day, essentially. So that's just kind of more of how the sheets and like looking at the Pokédex entries were inspiring leftover story ideas in my mind. But yeah, so I had the behavior, and then I would go down to the human interaction. So with human interaction, I thought I had everything covered as far as like how some Pokemon would interact in Hoenn. And specific for like the Hoenn specific Pokemon, I did kind of have a good amount covered. But when it came to the Kanto Pokemon, or not just Kanto Pokemon, when it came to the foreign Pokemon in particular, I was missing a lot of viable options. So like some Pokemon are just like trophy Pokemon, or some Pokemon only exist in preserves and zoos. And that was, they're not pets, they're not Teammon, they're not, pests or servicemon. So that was an option that I definitely was missing, that I had to write in more often than not. And then when it came to magic management, so magic, if you haven't caught on already, is what I call the typings in Leftovers, and I haven't put it out there yet because it's been a very recent development. But basically, there's a certain type of magic, and Pokemon can attack with magic, or they can attack without magic. Usually, Pokemon attack without magic because, well, that's spoilers. Let me not go into that. But whenever Pokemon do attack with magic, you'll be able to tell because they glow that, attack or part of them glows, versus if somebody just scratches someone regular, it's not going to glow. But if somebody uses scratch attack, it'll glow, their claws will glow or whatever. And the magic management section is where I would determine what would glow. So if Beautifly keeps most of its flying magic in its wings, maybe the patterns glow, or maybe the whole wings glow, or if Poochyena keeps its dark magic in its fangs, then its fangs would glow with dark magic when they attack. And that's more for figuring out for me when I draw what that's going to look like, what those attacks are going to look like. So magic management. And then the last portion, I believe, is the power scaling, or the power, I think it says power scale on there, but that's the last portion. And that was another one where I needed to change the title of the category, because it really should have been threat level. If you look at the, I don't know if you can actually see it on here, but if you look at the little text beside the power scale thing, it says basically how much of a threat is this Pokemon. So it really should have been a threat level thing, because some Pokemon, actually quite a few Pokemon, are powerful but aren't a threat to humans. For instance, Slacking you don't want to fuck with. He's big boy, but he's so just gentle. They're gentle giants, so they'd be a 3 on power level or power scale, but a 1 on threat level, you know what I mean? So threat level is the one I really should have, and that's the one I operated off of. So, but that's what it should have been called, threat level. But yeah, so that's it for the Pokemon species cards, which, man, took me 44 minutes. Oh my god. The rest of these are pretty self-explanatory and pretty short, so I'm not too worried. But the next up were magic typing sheets. So this was one where, or this is a section where I had to completely redo the whole worksheet, because I originally had one worksheet per magic typing, and again, I'll put those up on the screen so you can see the original versus where I ended up at. But I originally had one sheet per typing, so it was going to be 18. I was going to have to fill out 18 sheets, and it had all of the the strengths, the weaknesses, and then it had something called level manifestation. So level 1 Pokemon, a level 1 fire type Pokemon, might manifest with small cinders or small embers, versus a level 4 manifest fire type Pokemon who would have self-immolation, be able to set themselves on fire, and just their level. Basically, the manifestation thing was just how they're at each level, what mastery they have over the magic. Thing is, when I was going through the Pokemon sheets, I realized that every Pokemon manifests their magic differently. So it wouldn't really make sense to have an overall manifestation system on these on these sheets. I feel like the nerdiest person right now, but hopefully you guys are keeping up. It wouldn't make sense to have a individual level manifestations systems on each of the types, when each Pokemon can a level 1 Charmander might be able to use a full flamethrower versus a level 1 torch shape, which can only set small feathers on fire. So yeah, I went in and I was like, alright, let me just go ahead and redo the whole sheet. That way it's pared down and I don't have to worry about the anxiety of having 18 sheets ahead of me and like how daunting that is. So this is the one, and hopefully I put it on screen, but the one on the right is the sheet I ended up coming up with, and that took me from 18 sheets to fill out down to 3 sheets. And that's just basically what the type is. I forgot to mention that I also had so I had 18 sheets for the Pokemon typings, and then I also had aberrant typing, magic typing sheets. I ended up combining all of those because, like, I don't know what I was on when I came up with that idea, but I ended up combining all of them because they all work from the same typing system. It's just like aberrants don't have certain types of magic that Pokemon, well, and the aberrants being humans with powers, they don't have certain types that Pokemon could have. So I ended up changing the sheet to where it just focuses on strengths and weaknesses, and then I have like a checkbox for human or Pokemon and aberrants. So if Pokemon have it, which all Pokemon have all 18 types, so it's really just like, does an aberrant have it, or do aberrants have it or not? So yeah, I ended up doing that, and I think that's it for magic typing. Yes it is. Okay, so the next step was, or the next set of sheets to do were fighting and exhibition systems. And those are pretty self-explanatory. I think the next few are pretty self-explanatory. But I ended up having 2 fighting worksheets, like 2 fighting systems worksheets, and then 1 exhibition sheet. So, and the 1 exhibition sheet was like Pokemon contests. So it was basically just, going through whatever was on the sheet. It was pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I didn't really need, or that I could have probably worded better at the bottom, was the whole legality thing, because the fighting sheets were league sanctioned battling and illegal fights. So clearly one is legal and one is not. So I don't really, and then obviously with contests and stuff, those are legal. So I didn't necessarily need the legality portion down there, but we're here now. Okay, next up this is where we switch over to human sheets. So I knew ahead of time I didn't have as many human sheets to do, especially since I'd gotten rid of the aberrant thing, or the aberrant magic typing. But I knew ahead of time I didn't have as many human worksheets to do. So I was like, whew, it was really just about getting through the Pokemon worksheets, really. Specifically the Hoenn Pokemon worksheets, because that was the main thing that needed to be done, and then the rest of this is like, alright, I don't have a lot to work on. But I did end up coming up with, like for instance, in important holidays and events, I was only going to have like the 1 holiday that I have, but I ended up coming up with a couple more. I did the same thing that I did for the government worksheets, where I sat down and I listed which ones I would need first, so that way I knew how many pages to print off. And I ended up doing 4 worksheets for 3 worksheets for important holidays and events. And again, self-explanatory. The next section is religions and fellowships. I ended up doing 4 worksheets for those. There's 4 different religions and fellowships, and there's probably more, but same with all of these steps in this process. I don't want to sit there and come up with stuff on the fly. Like, I don't want to know everything. So if I come up with another religion later, I'll fill out another worksheet. But right now, these are just things that have been on my mind, been on my spirit for the past, few months or whatever. But something interesting with religions and fellowships is I'm glad I did the Pokemon worksheets first, because like specifically with like Groudon and Kyogre, for instance, figuring out how they behave in turn helped me figure out how people would come to worship them. So for instance, right now it's and this is all, you know, still work in progress stuff, but right now it's looking like Groudon was, you know, more of a reclusive kind of figure. So people who worship Groudon would worship like the idea of Groudon, whereas like Kyogre was very much out in the sea, you know, present in the sea around like other Pokemon and people who lived on the sea, and so they would worship Kyogre's presence. They knew Kyogre, whereas the idea of Groudon and what Groudon could do is what like Groudonians would worship. So it's I'm glad that I did the Pokemon worksheets first, because that definitely helped out a lot when it came to figuring out how a lot of these religions work. Okay, so I think classes and other identifications was the 6th section of worksheets that I needed to do. And basically those are just like anything that's not religion or like a political party or anything. So I can't really say specifically what the classes and stuff are, because I will go into those in leftovers at a certain point, but just know that there were 3 worksheets. So right now I have like 3 different, you know, identifications. And then the last thing that I ended up doing were Pokemon species cards for foreign Pokemon, and those ended up with 32 extra-ish worksheets. Definitely was daunting, because I was like, oh man, I'm done with my Pokemon species cards. Oh, but I have like a couple of other types of Pokemon that I know are in Hoenn that I need to, you know, come up with species cards for. Like for instance, Zubat aren't in the Hoenn decks, but they're in the regional decks for the games, but they're not classified as Hoenn Pokemon, obviously. Like Zubat, Machoke, Abra, mostly the Pokemon that are in Granite Cave. Those are the ones that I was thinking of. But then I looked into the actual Hoenn regional decks, and there's so many Pokemon that I did not account for. Like, I didn't realize, I mean, obviously cosplay Pikachu is in Oris, but I didn't realize that you could like find a Pikachu in, like, it's in the regional decks in Hoenn. And then there's like a couple Pokemon that aren't in the regional decks in Hoenn that are that I had to do species sheets for too, because they were brought over. And actually that brings me to a good point. A lot of the Hoenn Pokemon, or a lot of the Hoenn Pokemon obviously were born in Hoenn and like came from Hoenn. But when it came to the foreign Mon, and foreign Mon is like usually, generally speaking, just Pokemon from Kanto and Johto, because obviously at the time those were the only 2 other regions out when that regional dex was made. But yeah, so those Pokemon, I had the interesting experience of having to figure out not only just where, because when you look at the Pokedex entry, the Bulbapedia entry, for those Pokemon, you see where they're from in Kanto or where they're from in Johto. So I also had to take into account, like, okay, they might live in grasslands in Kanto, but they don't live in grasslands. They live like in abandoned buildings or whatever in Hoenn. So I had to put like, you know, brackets or whatever. I had to separate those. And then same thing with the behavior section too, and, you know, diet too. Like, being in a new place, being in a different region changes a lot of stuff. So there's a couple of instances where I had like, oh, these Pokemon in Hoenn or in Kanto are like really frail and not like, they don't, you know, survive very long. But in Hoenn, where they become basically saltwater animals as opposed to fresh lake ones, they're hardy and they're, you know, actually predators. And I can't remember exactly what Pokemon I'm talking about there, but there was a lot of this Pokemon has developed a variation for Hoenn, so look out for those. I still have to design them, obviously, but lots of Pokemon variants from other regions Pokemon from other regions that have variants in Hoenn. So excited about that. But yeah, so that, and again, that was I had 32 worksheets for that. I was supposed to do a rundown of how many worksheets I ended up doing total, but just know that it's over 100. But yeah, so where do I go now? So I was originally not excited because I was, doing all the stuff, and this is like the planning phase. And I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, but when it comes to like my anxiety, one of my biggest coping mechanisms is like research. So whenever I'm like, okay, I need to do this thing, I will research, so that way I'll research forever, so that way I feel like I'm doing the thing, but I don't actually have to face doing the thing. And so that's one of my not coping mechanisms. That's one of my safety behaviors, one of my like comfort behaviors, where I'll like for instance, if I'm doing this Pokemon stuff or I'm doing the leftovers hiatus stuff, it's like writing the story is scary. Like writing the story ahead of time is scary because I'm a pantser. But if I just research a bunch of stuff, then I'm still doing work technically, but I don't have to face writing the story. And so that like sense of dread started coming in where I was like, oh God, I'm almost done with research. And now I actually have to work on writing the story. That started to come in around I want to say the beginning of March, because I wasn't done with all the worksheets yet, but I'm going to say around the beginning of March is when that sense of dread started coming in. And I was really like, okay, don't drag your feet, because whenever that happens, I'm like, oh, well, I'm tired today. I don't want to do these worksheets. But I knew I had a deadline, so I was like, don't drag your feet. We can deal with the anxiety later. And would you have it? Would you know? Later, started, creeping up, and I actually got hit with just all of these story points. It was like something, Pandora's box opened, and I got hit with all these fire ass story beats. And I'm like, now I can't wait to actually start working on the story. And that like got me through the last portion of doing this section of worksheets. So my goal now, or my plan now, is to, I was just going to jump right into working on the worksheets, but my goal, or my plan now, is to take a break and start in April. I'm going to start April 1st is when I'm going to start doing the narrative worksheets and like actually writing the story. And it's scary to think about now, but also super duper exciting, because there's a lot of stuff that, like, the faster I write, and I'm not gonna like speed through obviously because I want it to be quality stuff, but like the faster I end up writing the story out, the sooner I can get back in the pages again. And that's really exciting because I haven't drawn a comic page in like forever. My fingerwebs have cobwebs between them, like. But my plan was to go ahead and start on the 1st of April doing this whole, starting the whole story push. And I want to be done with that by June, July, because I want to be done basically by the halfway point of this year, approximately. So that way I have the rest of the year to work on page buffer. And I think I've mentioned that before, but I'm on my way. I'm on a good track there, thankfully. But I haven't looked into what I need to do for the narrative portion, because I think I need to go in and figure out, like, go through the huge, all the way at the beginning of the huge document that I had, which I think was also 69 pages. Now that I think about it, Jesus, this number. But the huge document that I had that, where I just like threw out all of my brain dump, basically. I got to go through that and do some worksheets about like the structure of the arcs that I have in mind, so that way I can look at that and then figure out like, okay, where can I make changes at. So, but that's in the future. For now, however, I was like, all right, you know what, I'm gonna do a little project. I'm gonna do a little fun project, and I called it Destination Hoeing. And basically what it is I might put it up on the screen, the picture of me like going on vacation or whatever. And I don't know if like I would have time to do government stuff, so you might have been looking at Destination Hoenn this entire time for the speed paint. But basically, I was acting like I was going on a research trip around Hoenn, where I just go from town to town, place to place, because I had some routes in there and, like, you know, forests and stuff too, and just figure out or just observe the culture, the architecture mainly was one of the main ones that I was observing. But the culture, architecture, some of the famous people in the place, the delicacies, just basically like I was going on a research trip. And I would, you know, keep it recorded on a sketchbook. And I actually got pretty far. I mean, my main goal was to finish the Western Peninsula. I can't remember. Yeah, I think it's the Western Peninsula, or the Western, like, branch of Hoenn. Basically, Little Root through Dewford. I wanted to finish that so I could start working on, like, Slateport and everything, because I know everything up to Slateport and to a degree Maulville too, but I know in detail everything up to Slateport, and then everything else after that is just kind of vague ideas. And I'm talking about as far as, like, the way the towns are set up, and, like, actually having drawn up to Slateport. I know that a little better than I know Maulville, because I haven't really touched that. So Maulville forward. Thing is, because I was like, okay, yeah, this is gonna be awesome. This will give me, you know, some time to figure out what I'm doing for these certain towns and stuff before I even get there in the story. But here's the thing, because that sense of dread started coming back, and I was like, man, I really just want to draw. Like, I'm doing good, you know what I mean? I'm doing good. I'm getting through these towns. I got through, like, 5 towns in 4 days, and, like, that includes forests and, like, routes and stuff too. So I've been drawing a lot the past few days, because I had a long weekend too. But I was like, oh, I'm doing good. Why is there this sense of dread? Turns out I actually depend, and this is where the pantser part comes back in, I actually kind of depend on discovering places with Asadi when we get there. So I think, and I'm still working out these feelings, I'm still trying to figure it out, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to just stop the Destination Hoenn thing, because I don't want that to come into conflict with, like, my enjoyment of going from place to place in leftovers, because right now Asadi hasn't been to any of these places, so I get to kind of discover them through her, and, like, through the shenanigans that the trainer troop and everybody and, like, her team and all that go through. I get to discover, and, like, I don't know if, you know, a lot of you guys know, but, like, whenever I get to a town, I feel like, actually, now that I'm about to say it, I feel like that's something that we all kind of do. But whenever I get to a town, that is, like, my first time drawing that town, and that's, like, my first time. Like, I thought about, you know, what the town might look like, or I thought about, you know, what might be in the town. And obviously with these worksheets, I have, like, town worksheets, so I know, you know, what the culture of the city and the town is. But it's different knowing that and actually drawing it out, and actually, like, experiencing getting to draw it for the first time. And I don't want Destination Hoenn to ruin that little bit of pantsing that I got left. That little bit of, like, discovery that I'm looking forward to. So, not that I don't have any more discovery left. Obviously, there's, like, a lot of stuff that I'm going to be discovering along the way. But I didn't realize how big that was. How big me entering, because it started to feel like when I was going through and I was making my observations about, like, Petalburg and, you know, Westboro and stuff like that, it started to feel like I'd be retreading ground when I get to it in leftovers, and I didn't want that to be a feeling. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I think I might stop that and just, like, chill and maybe do some creature design like I had originally thought that I was going to do, or originally planned to do for my prize, my milestone prize for finishing these worksheets. I will say I'm glad that I went out because I took off. Cause I had a long weekend because I taken off, and I'm glad that I went out with the idea that I was gonna do Destination Hoenn, because I found some really cool sketchbooks, and I'm sad because I feel like they're I think they're out of print because I can't find them anywhere online, but I found some really cool sketchbooks, and they're like the best sketchbooks I've had in years. So I'm excited to be able to not only do the creature design stuff that I want to do for my milestone, but to also do like story beat stuff. Like that's gonna be interesting. Is actually doing actual concept art for leftovers alongside writing the story. It's gonna be it's gonna be wild, and I wonder if I'm gonna have that same feeling, like if I am working on the story and I'm like, oh, I want to draw this part of Verdant Turf. I wonder if I'm gonna have the same feeling of like I might be retreading it if I do it now versus if I do it when we get there, as I have with Destination Hoenn. So I don't know. That's something to definitely keep an eye on. But I will leave that there for now. So yeah, the goal right now is to just chill. Until April, and I'm giving myself that hard deadline of or not hard deadline, but the hard like start point of April, because I think it's easy to like overwork yourself, especially when it's something that you're doing and you like actually love doing it. I know it sounds like how can you overwork yourself if you love doing the thing? But it's really easy to keep doing the thing that you love and then not realize when you're burnt out, and then I feel like that happens a lot with comics, too, just in general, where it's like, man, I really love working on leftovers, but for some reason I just can't work on it anymore. And it's because you're burnt out, and it's important to schedule breaks. And I know hiatus is a big scary word. As somebody on a year-long hiatus right now, it's definitely scary, but it's good to schedule those breaks out, and it's good to pace yourself. So yeah, I'm gonna be chilling for the rest of March, and maybe finally finishing Pokemon Legends Arceus. Like, please. I'm on like area 2. I need to finish the game, and plus I just want to chill. It's such a vibey game. And I'll have my nights free, so I can do that now. But yeah, this is going for like an hour and 8 minutes, it looks like. So that's about where I expected this to end, or where I expected this to land. I expected at least an hour. So hopefully that was informative. Hopefully that was entertaining. Hopefully I can come up with a speed paint long enough and find music long enough to like sustain this whole thing. But yeah, so I am hungry, so I'm gonna go get some food, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, night, wherever it is. Thanks for listening, thanks for coming, and yeah, it's gonna be Takara signing out.